Maya's car rolled to a stop in front of her modest suburban home. The late afternoon sun, casting long shadows over the quiet street. She glanced at her phone, 6:15 p.m., and sighed. Exhausted from a day that had stretched too long, all she wanted was a peaceful evening in her own sanctuary. But as she stepped out and walked up the driveway, a sudden wave of disbelief froze her in place. Her backyard, her private refuge, had been transformed. Overnight, a lavish wedding ceremony was unfolding beneath a large white tent, complete with twinkling fairy lights, elegant floral arrangements, and rows of folding chairs filled with strangers dressed in their finest. Laughter echoed, mingling with soft music from a live band tucked into a corner. At the center, a decorated altar stood proudly, draped in white silk and roses. Maya's heart pounded. What the hell is going on? She whispered to herself. Her own yard was no longer hers. Children ran through the grass. Couples danced on her patio, and a photographer snapped pictures of the glowing bride and groom. The scent of fresh-cut flowers, mixed with the faint aroma of catered food, filled the air. She took a hesitant step forward. "Excuse me," she called out, voice trembling, but loud enough to cut through the chatter. A tall man in a suit turned toward her with a polite smile. "Hello, you must be Maya. I'm Thomas, the event coordinator. Welcome to the Johnson-Williams wedding. Isn't it beautiful?" Maya blinked, disbelief turning into fury. "This is my property. Nobody asked me if this was okay." Thomas's smile faltered just a bit. "I'm sorry, but the Homeowners Association booked this as a community event. We had to act quickly." Maya's eyes narrowed. "You had to? Without asking me? You can't just rent out my backyard to strangers." She stormed toward the house, fumbling for her phone. The HOA's number was saved under HOA office. She dialed, her voice rising with every ring. After a tense hold, a calm but cold voice answered. "This is Linda, HOA president. How can I help you?" "Linda, did you authorize a wedding in my backyard? Without my permission?" Maya demanded. Linda sighed, almost as if annoyed. "We're doing what's best for the community. Your yard was available, and we needed a venue last minute. It's a community event." "Community event? It's my home," Maya said through clenched teeth. "You can't just treat it like a rental space." Linda's voice hardened. "The bylaws allow the HOA to use common and private spaces for official functions. You should have been notified." Maya's hands trembled. "I wasn't. This is harassment." Click. The line went dead. Maya's breath caught in her throat. It was clear the HOA wasn't going to back down. But why had they acted so boldly, so carelessly? And why had no one informed her? Her neighbors peeked through windows, whispering, casting curious glances. Some nodded politely. Others looked uneasy. Maya's sense of betrayal cut deeper with each second. This was her home, her sanctuary, not a stage for strangers. Her mind raced as she paced her backyard, stepping carefully around the wedding decorations, her eyes darting from the cheerful crowd to the glowing altar. Something about the entire setup felt off, as if the HOA had a hidden agenda. And then a chilling thought crept in. What if this emergency event was just the beginning? What if the HOA was planning to treat every homeowner's property as their personal playground? Maya's fist clenched. She refused to be a victim. With determination hardening in her eyes, she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to let the HOA steamroll her without a fight. The next morning, Maya woke to an eerie quiet. The wedding guests were gone, the tent dismantled, and her backyard looked as if nothing had happened. But the air still crackled with tension. The invisible weight of the previous day's invasion, heavy on her chest. Determined, Maya dressed quickly and headed to the HOA office. a nondescript building just a few blocks away. She wasn't going to let this slide. The receptionist, a young woman with tight lips, barely looked up as Maya explained why she was there. "The board is in session," she said curtly. "You'll have to wait." Maya sat in the waiting area, nerves jangling. The walls seemed to close in around her, the fluorescent lights buzzing softly. Minutes dragged, stretching into what felt like hours. Finally, the door opened, and the HOA president, Linda, emerged. Her face was unreadable, carefully practiced in calm authority. "Maya," she said smoothly, "I assume you want to discuss yesterday's event?" Maya didn't waste a second. "Yes, you had no right to book a wedding at my home without asking me. This isn't just about etiquette. It's a violation of my privacy and property rights." Linda nodded, almost indulgently. "I understand your concerns, but you have to see the bigger picture. The community is struggling financially. We needed to find creative ways to generate revenue. This event was necessary." Maya's jaw tightened. "You didn't have to use my property without consent. You could have asked." Linda's eyes flickered, something unreadable passing through them. "There wasn't time. We had to act quickly." Maya sensed more was left unsaid. "What kind of emergency justifies treating people's homes like this?" Linda's smile was tight. "Let's just say the community's survival depends on cooperation." Before Maya could press further, a voice whispered behind her, "Stop asking questions." Maya spun around. A man in a dark jacket stood near the reception desk, watching her with cold, unreadable eyes. He didn't identify himself and didn't say more, just gave a warning with his stare. Chills ran down Maya's spine as she left the office. The receptionist gave her a pointed look. "You're stirring up trouble," she said softly. Trouble. The word echoed ominously in Maya's mind. Back home, Maya found an envelope slipped under her front door. Inside was a single sheet of paper with neat handwriting. "Stop digging, or this will get worse." Her hand shook as she read the threat. Who was behind it? The HOA? Someone else? For the first time, fear crept in. But fear was quickly replaced by resolve. Maya wasn't about to back down. She called her closest neighbor David, a quiet man who had kept to himself, but had a reputation for being sharp and resourceful. "David," she whispered urgently, "the HOA is hiding something. They booked my yard without permission and threatened me. I think they're involved in something bigger, and now I'm being warned to stop." David was silent for a moment, then said, "Meet me tomorrow. I've got some things you need to see, but be careful. This isn't just petty HOA drama." That night, Maya lay awake, listening to every creak of the house. The sense of being watched was real, suffocating. Her phone buzzed with unknown numbers, but every time she answered, there was only silence. The stakes were rising fast. Who was the silent threat behind the polite smiles? What secret was buried beneath the HOA's community events? Maya knew one thing for sure. She was no longer just a homeowner. She was caught in a web of secrets, power, and intimidation, and the fight was only just beginning. The next morning, Maya met David in the quiet corner of a local coffee shop. The air was thick with the smell of roasted beans, but Maya barely tasted her drink, her mind racing. David slid a thin folder across the table. "I've been digging through the HOA's digital records. What I found isn't just shady. It's criminal." Maya's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" David tapped the folder. "Hidden meeting minutes, private emails, unauthorized contracts. The HOA is secretly renting out residents' yards for big events. Weddings, parties, even corporate gigs. And it's all happening without homeowners' permission." Maya frowned. "That explains yesterday. But why keep it secret?" And who profits? David's face hardened. The board members. They're pocketing kickbacks. The community is drowning in debt. But the board is making money on the side. It's a classic cover-up. Maya's stomach twisted. Her home wasn't just misused. It was part of a corrupt scheme. She flipped through copies of emails with coded language, discussing venues and clients, hiding the fact that these venues were private homes, including hers. But why the threats? Maya asked quietly. David shrugged. Because someone doesn't want you to expose this. You're poking a hornet's nest. Just then, Maya's phone buzzed violently on the table. She glanced at the screen. An unknown number. The caller hung up before she could answer. A cold shiver ran down her spine. They decided to take the investigation further. David helped Maya access a password-protected HOA portal, hidden from residents. There, they uncovered detailed contracts, invoices, and even maps marking which properties were booked for secret events. Her home was listed multiple times. As Maya scanned the documents, her breath caught. The upcoming events were not just casual, weddings or parties. They included large-scale gatherings with questionable clientele. Some contracts hinted at clients who preferred discretion, hinting at more than just celebrations. The implications were chilling. When Maya returned home that evening, she found her mailbox stuffed with flyers promoting a HOA summer gala, scheduled right on her lawn. The tagline read, "An exclusive event for the community. By invitation only." But there was no invitation for Maya. That night, a shadow moved outside her window. She caught a glimpse of a figure watching her through the curtains. Her heart raced as she pulled the blinds shut, locking every door twice. She realized she wasn't just battling a corrupt HOA. Someone was spying on her, waiting for her next move. The next morning, Maya woke to find her garden gate vandalized. The lock was broken, and threatening words scrolled across the fence in black spray paint. "Stay quiet, or else," neighbors whispered. As she inspected the damage, a few glanced away quickly, as if afraid to be seen talking to her. Maya's isolation deepened. Determined to fight back, she started recording every interaction, photographing every threat, and backing up all the documents David had helped her find. But the deeper she dug, the darker the shadows grew. One afternoon, Maya received a cryptic voicemail, a distorted voice warning her again, "Stop now or face the consequences." Instead of fear, anger surged through her veins. This wasn't just about a stolen wedding or broken bylaws anymore. It was about power, control, and Maya was done being controlled. She clenched her fists, staring out the window at her home, the battleground that had become her life. She was ready to bring the shadows into the light. Maya's backyard was quiet now. The echoes of last week's uninvited wedding faded, but the threat still lingered like a storm cloud. Every creak of the house, every whisper of wind outside, felt like a warning, but Maya was done waiting. She wasn't just going to sit back and take the HOA's bullying anymore. That night, under the dim light of her kitchen, Maya plotted her next move. She needed a plan that would shake the HOA to its core, something that would make them think twice before invading her home again. She reached out to David and a trusted local contractor, Jake, who ran a small demolition and repair crew. Jake wasn't a troublemaker, but he had a reputation for getting things done, especially when homeowners were up against powerful organizations. After explaining everything, Jake agreed to help Maya. "We'll make sure the HOA remembers your backyard is your property," he said with a grim smile. The plan was risky. For the next unauthorized event the HOA booked without Maya's permission, Jake's crew would arrive disguised as caterers and vendors. Their mission: quietly sabotage the event. Nothing illegal or dangerous, just enough to cause a series of accidents that would force the party to shut down. The night of the event arrived faster than Maya expected. Guests arrived, unaware of the brewing chaos behind the scenes. Elegant lights twinkled, music played, and a crowd gathered on Maya's lawn for what was supposed to be another community celebration. Maya stood by the side, heart pounding, watching the first act of her plan unfold. It started with a sudden blackout. Jake's crew had discreetly cut power to the event's main supply. Music stopped mid-song. Speakers went silent. The crowd murmured, puzzled. Then, one of the tent's main support poles creaked alarmingly, and, with a slow, suspenseful groan, collapsed toward the buffet table, scattering plates and guests alike. No one was hurt, but panic rippled through the crowd. Maya caught the horrified faces of the HOA board members, scrambling to contain the chaos. Next came the flooding. A garden sprinkler, carefully tampered with, erupted, sending a deluge across the patio, drenching guests and soaking the expensive decorations. The slick grass turned dangerous, forcing the event organizers to halt proceedings. Throughout it all, Maya stayed calm, watching the HOA's facade crumble. But the final act was the showstopper. Under the main tent, Jake's crew had dug a shallow, trench beneath a patch of grass, cleverly concealed with turf and soil. As guests began evacuating, one of the crew triggered a minor but dramatic ground collapse, enough to break the tent's frame and send it tumbling. The event descended into disarray. Guests rushed away, phones out, capturing the disaster. That had turned a glamorous wedding into a scene from a slapstick nightmare. The HOA board was left stunned and furious. Unable to restore order or save face, Maya slipped back into her house, heart pounding not from fear but adrenaline. Her phone buzzed immediately, a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over." A shiver ran down Maya's spine, but she smiled. They had crossed a line. Maya's wrecking surprise wasn't just retaliation. It was a warning. She wasn't someone to be pushed around. The next morning, news of the event's catastrophic failure spread like wildfire through the neighborhood and online. Some neighbors whispered about Maya's boldness, while others wondered if she'd gone too far. But one thing was clear: the HOA was shaken. Maya had taken back a small piece of her power, and the game was just beginning. The morning after the disastrous wedding event, Maya awoke to a neighborhood buzzing with whispers. Her phone was already flooded with texts, some supportive, many cautious, and a few downright hostile. Word traveled fast. The videos of the tent, a collapse and flooded patio, had gone viral in the community's private social media group. People were taking sides, and Maya's bold move was polarizing the neighborhood like never before. Her closest neighbor, Mrs. Gardner, an elderly woman who once smiled warmly at Maya, now avoided eye contact, crossing the street to bypass her lawn. "It's all getting out of hand," she muttered to a passing friend. Maya's own mailbox held a mix of letters. One was a handwritten note from a neighbor she barely knew, praising her courage. Another was a formal complaint signed by several homeowners accusing her of reckless behavior and threatening to call security if the chaos continued. Even David, Maya's confidant, seemed more guarded. "People are scared, Maya," he warned softly when they met at a coffee shop. "The HOA controls a lot more than you realize. Some neighbors don't want to get involved." Maya nodded, but refused to back down. She couldn't. The HOA's betrayal was too deep, the stakes too high, but isolation came quickly. At the local grocery store, she overheard hushed conversations and felt the sting of whispered judgments. Some neighbors looked at her with suspicion, others with pity, as if she had unleashed a storm that might engulf them all. She realized that the HOA wasn't just battling her. They were rewriting the narrative, painting her as the neighborhood troublemaker. Then, one evening, as Maya was returning from work, she found her front porch light shattered. On the ground lay a small package, wrapped tightly and ominously sealed. With trembling hands, she unwrapped it. Inside was a single photo, a blurry shot of her leaving her house the night before, taken from a distance. Written on the back in bold letters, "We're watching." Fear crept in again, heavier this time. That night, Maya barely slept. Every creak, every shadow outside seemed magnified. Her phone rang at midnight. The caller ID showed unknown. She hesitated, then answered. Distorted voice whispered, "You're in over your head. Stop now." The line went dead. The threats were no longer just words. They were warnings, meant to intimidate. Maya knew the HOA had more allies than just the board members. Some neighbors were too scared or too complicit to speak out, but she also knew this was a turning point. She had ignited a fight, not just for her property, but for the soul of the community. The question was, how far were they willing to go to silence her? With the neighborhood divided, Maya decided it was time to rally the neighbors, who still believed in standing up. She organized a small meeting in her living room, inviting those quietly sympathetic but afraid to speak out publicly. As neighbors trickled in, tense glances and whispered conversations filled the room. Maya stood at the front, her voice steady but urgent. "We're stronger together. The HOA is abusing its power, and it's only going to get worse if we don't act. This isn't just about me. It's about every homeowner here." Faces softened, walls lowered. For the first time since the wedding, disaster, Maya felt a flicker of hope. But as the meeting ended, her phone buzzed again. Another text from an unknown number. "You've been warned." The silent threat loomed larger than ever. Maya's fight was growing fiercer, but so was the danger. The weeks that followed were a nightmare, painted in paranoia and whispered threats. Maya's quiet neighborhood had turned into a battleground, where suspicion and fear hung in the air like a thick fog. Every glance from a neighbor felt like a potential betrayal. Every unexpected knock at the door sent chills down her spine. Maya's phone buzzed constantly with anonymous messages, some warnings, others promises, veiled as threats. Yet, amid the fear, something inside her hardened. She wasn't alone anymore. The small group she'd gathered in her living room had grown, meeting secretly at local cafes and parks to strategize. Maya became their unspoken leader, a beacon for homeowners fed up with the HOA's iron grip. One evening, as Maya sifted through files and photos, documenting the HOA's illicit dealings, David arrived with urgent news. "They're onto us," he said grimly, sliding a newspaper clipping across the table. The headline read, "HOA board accuses local homeowner of vandalism, threatens legal action." Below was a grainy photo of Maya's vandalized gate from Part 3. But the article twisted the story, insinuating she staged the damage herself to stir trouble. Maya slammed the paper down. "They're trying to discredit me. They want to isolate me, make me look unstable." David nodded. "They're playing dirty. We need evidence, proof that can't be twisted." Determined, Maya doubled down. She installed cameras around her property, recording every inch of her yard and street. She began compiling a digital archive, emails, contracts, photos, recordings of threatening calls. This was no longer just a fight for her home. It was a war for truth. But the HOA wasn't just battling Maya legally. The harassment escalated. One night, her car tires were slashed. And another evening, a mysterious fire broke out in her backyard compost, small but unnerving. Maya reported everything to the police, but without clear proof. Investigations stalled. Her friends urged caution. "Maybe back off a bit," one said. "They're dangerous." But Maya refused. If she backed down, the HOA would win, and every homeowner would lose their voice. Then came a breakthrough. One of Maya's neighbors, Mrs. Patel, a usually reserved woman, approached her discreetly. "I have something you need to see," she whispered one afternoon, pulling Maya into her garage. Mrs. Patel handed over a USB drive. "I worked as the HOA secretary before all this started. I saved emails and documents when I saw things going wrong. They're planning something big, a secret sale of community land to a developer. That's why they're desperate for money and why they're pushing homeowners around." Maya's eyes widened as she plugged the drive into her laptop. The files revealed detailed plans and correspondence about selling a nearby park, a place where children played, without community approval. "This changes everything," Maya breathed. These HOA wasn't just exploiting homeowners. It was selling off their shared heritage. With new evidence in hand, Maya prepared to confront the board at the next meeting, ready to expose the corruption once and for all. But the night before the meeting, her house was broken into. Nothing was stolen, but her files were scattered. Her laptop smashed. The message was clear: stop now, or face worse consequences. Maya stood in the wreckage, hands trembling, but her spirit unbroken. They could break her things, but not her will. Her fight was no longer just for her home or her neighbors. It was for justice, and now everyone was watching. The morning of the HOA meeting dawned grey and heavy, as if the sky itself bore witness to the storm about to erupt. Maya felt the weight of every sleepless night, every threat, every shattered moment, compressed into this single day as she entered the community center where the meeting was held. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Neighbors she hadn't seen at her house before now watched her with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Some faces were friendly. Others masked thinly veiled hostility. At the front, the HOA board sat behind a long table, smug and composed. Linda, the president, gave Maya a cold smile. "We're glad you could join us, Maya." Maya took a deep breath, clutching the USB drive tightly in her pocket. This was her moment. The meeting began with the usual pleasantries, but Maya waited patiently for her turn. When she finally rose, a hush fell over the room. "I'm here because the HOA has betrayed this community," Maya began, her voice steady but powerful. "They've been renting our homes without permission, profiting from secret deals, and threatening homeowners who speak out." She clicked the remote, projecting the damning emails and contracts onto the screen behind her. Gasps echoed around the room as the documents laid bare the board's corruption. Then she revealed the biggest bombshell: the plans to sell the community park to a developer. This park isn't just green space. It's our children's playground, our neighbors' gathering place. The board planned to sell it without telling anyone. Linda's face flushed, but she quickly regained composure. "These accusations are baseless and defamatory," she snapped. "We are acting in the community's best interest." But Maya wasn't finished. She played recorded calls of threats made to her, showed photos of vandalism and intimidation, and detailed the illegal use of homeowners' properties. The room was tense, divided between shock and disbelief. Some neighbors stood up, demanding answers. Others murmured in denial. Linda tried to regain control. "Enough! You are disrupting this meeting." But Maya's final move was unexpected. From her pocket, she pulled out a stack of signatures, petitions, from homeowners demanding an independent audit of the HOA's finances and governance. "Change is coming," Maya declared. "We deserve transparency and respect. This isn't just about me. This is about reclaiming our community." For a moment, the room was silent. Then, a slow, powerful wave of applause began, starting with a few brave voices, swelling into a chorus. The board members shifted uncomfortably as neighbors stood united behind Maya. Linda glared at Maya, defeated for the first time. But just as Maya thought victory was near, a loud crash interrupted the meeting. The doors burst open, and several uniformed police officers entered. "Everyone stay calm," one officer announced. "There's been a report of a safety hazard on the premises." Confused murmurs filled the room as officers began inspecting the area. Suddenly, one of them pulled out a small bag containing a suspicious powder from beneath the table near the board members' seats. Maya's heart pounded. The HOA had staged a fake threat, possibly to justify an emergency shutdown or discredit the meeting, but the officers were thorough. They took samples and began questioning the board members and attendees. The tension skyrocketed. In the chaos, Maya caught Linda's eye. The cold smile had vanished, replaced by fear, as the officers escorted Linda and several board members out for questioning. Maya felt a surge of relief mixed with adrenaline. The fight was far from over, but the tide was turning. Neighbors who had stayed silent before now approached Maya, some with tears, others with words of thanks. Maya realized this battle was bigger than she had imagined, and her courage had sparked a community-wide awakening. The wrecking surprise had become a revolution. The police investigation stretched over several tense days. The HOA board members were suspended, their secrets unraveling in slow motion as auditors combed through financial records. Maya's evidence was solid. The community's outcry was deafening. Yet beneath the surface of victory, something unexpected began to emerge. One afternoon, Maya received an anonymous envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a letter. No signature, just a single sentence scrawled in hurried handwriting. "Not all enemies wear suits. Trust no one." Her heart skipped a beat. She shared the letter with David, who frowned deeply. "This means there's someone else, someone closer than you think." Maya's mind raced. Could it be one of her neighbors, a supposed ally, or even someone within her own circle? Determined to find the truth, Maya and David reviewed their contacts and meetings from the past weeks. They realized that during the neighborhood gatherings, some attendees had been unusually quiet, watching more than participating. Then came the revelation. A friend of Maya's, one she had trusted implicitly, confessed late one night, "I didn't want to get involved, but I've seen things." "I'm sorry." The friend revealed they had been pressured by an unknown figure linked to the HOA's corrupt network. They had relayed information about Maya's plans back to the board. Betrayal stung like fire, but Maya steeled herself. This fight wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. With this new knowledge, Maya worked swiftly to secure the remaining evidence, sealing her digital files and warning her allies to be cautious. Meanwhile, the community rallied. A vote was scheduled to dissolve the old HOA board and elect new members, people genuinely committed to transparency and respect. On election day, Maya watched as neighbors lined up to cast their ballots, many smiling at her with gratitude and renewed hope. The results were announced. The crowd erupted in cheers. The corrupt board was ousted. New leadership promised reform, accountability, and a restored sense of community. Maya's home was no longer just a battleground. It was a symbol of resilience. But just as she began to breathe easier, A final surprise awaited at the community. A center's closing event. The new HOA president approached Maya, holding a small wrapped box. "For your courage," they said softly. Inside was a framed photo, Maya's backyard, vibrant and alive, with neighbors gathered for a joyful picnic. On the back, a note read, "This is what your fight has saved." Tears welled in Maya's eyes. The wedding that had been booked without her permission, the threats, the sabotage, it all led to this moment of rebirth. Her wrecking surprise had shattered more than just a party. It shattered silence, fear and corruption, and from those broken pieces, a stronger, united community emerged. Maya knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would always be challenges, shadows lurking beneath the surface. But now she wasn't alone. She had her neighbors, her truth, and the unshakable belief that one person's courage could change everything. The HOA's greatest mistake was underestimating her, and Maya's greatest victory was turning a nightmare into a new beginning.